Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Gerard.
All right, so you've been burned before. You hired a salesperson with a shiny resume, glowing references, and a promise to crush it. But 6 months in, they barely moved the needle. Now, they can't seem to connect with your customers, and every excuse sounds the same. The leads aren't great, the product is tough to sell, or even worse, it just takes time. Meanwhile, your revenue's flat, your team is frustrated, and you're stuck cleaning up the mess again. So why does this keep happening? Because you're hiring the wrong kind of salesperson for your business, and you don't even know it. Different sales roles demand different skills and unwavering desire to get better at those skills. But most founders don't define those needs and don't find a process to find the right hire. So today we're pulling back the curtain on why small businesses keep hiring salespeople who can't sell their product or service and exactly how to fix it. I'm Rick Gerard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people by sharing insights from top performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders. Like our guest today, Mr. Gary Braun. Now, Gary is the founder and partner of Pivotal Advisors. Gary is a lifelong salesperson and sales leader. Gary helped grow his last company from 1 million to 400 million revenue, leading two fast-paced decisions of hunter sales teams. He didn't just manage growth, he drove it. And Gary co-founded Pivotal Advisors, a firm dedicated to helping small and mid-sized businesses install the structure, systems, and sales leadership they need to scale. Since then, he and his team have worked with over 400 companies nationwide to transform the way they hire, manage, and grow sales teams, which is what makes Gary the perfect expert to today's topic. Gary, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. All right, I always like to start out with like a little bit of a experience share because, like I've been a recruiter. Recruiting is really sales, right?
Sure.
And one of the things that I had, it took me like 10 years to have this aha moment, is that there's a very different mentality when it comes from somebody who's got a transactional mindset, which is what most recruiters have, to, like somebody who can actually sell to a CEO, or, like positioning is such a key component. And it took me a long time to learn that. And I'm sure, you might have do, so let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, like, let's just all admit first off that we don't know how to hire salespeople, right?
I know a little bit about it.
I know how to hire salespeople too, but I'm right there with you. Like we've got two experts here that are really good at what we do. So like, let's give the audience something good to chew on.
Yeah.
So yeah, give me your kind of take on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and as you said, we worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients. Whenever they say they want to hire, the first thing they do is they say, "I want a person from my industry who's got a good track record, who's got a lot of drive or grit, or fill in whatever you want there. They're really good at relationships." I've asked CEOs these questions all the time. They'll come up with it's almost the same stuff every time.
Yeah.
And then I say, "And if you've got that, you're going to hire them?" And they're like, "Yeah, that'd be perfect." I'm like, that's table stakes. That's ante. If you don't have that, you shouldn't be in sales. There's a lot more that you need to go beyond to determine whether you've got the right person or not, because not all salespeople are the same.
So very true. So very true. I met a guy once a few years ago, like I was at a sales training seminar, and he was the number one RV sales person in the world.
Wow.
And he was, or like, at least in the US, and he was kind of this good old boy wearing overalls, didn't really talk a lot. All he did was ask questions. And that was like a big aha moment for me that, he was he was so good at what he did, but you would never assume that he was a salesperson.
Great. And that was probably perfect for that kind of sales.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
flip back. You mentioned my last company I was at. When we were still relatively small and we were an unknown name and we were trying to grow, I thought I was really smart. We hired a whole bunch of people from big name brands like, SAP and Oracle and everything else. And they came in, they were terrible.
Yeah.
They're like, nobody calls me back. And they were used to when they were at the big name brand places, they had credibility, they had trust already, they had brand recognition. They came to our place and they were nobody. They're like, we paid them way too much money. And they all flamed out.
Yeah. 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 Because they're following on brand recognition, not on skills. I mean, hey, look at it. When I'm calling and saying, hey, I'm a recruiter from Google, it's a much different story than, hey, I'm a recruiter from Interture. Like nobody's heard of me.
Right. Right.
Right.
And there's all different types of salespeople, as I started to talk about. There's your hunter people to go find new stuff. There's your farmer people who can grow existing. There's people who can sell to a CEO, walk into a boardroom and give a presentation, which is way different than somebody who's, a phone pounder and is used to making 100 calls a day. There's people who are good networkers. There's people, there's just all kinds of different skill sets, but most people just rely on, well, they've got a good track record and they came from my industry. And by the way, everybody's resume looks like they've got a good track record.
Well, I've never talked to a salesperson who wasn't amazing at what they do.
Oh yeah.
But the numbers show that 80% of them are mediocre at best, right? So let's break that down a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about what type of salesperson a company needs, because companies don't think about this, right? So what do you need to think about, or what should we be thinking about when we're going to hire a salesperson?
I like to break down what are the specific skill sets within that role that they need to be good at. I'll go all the way to the start. Are we an inside salesperson or are we an outside salesperson? And are we, do I have to be really good at managing an entire territory where I have to bounce around? Am I given an account list? Am I just said, here's the phone book, go get them? I suppose that's a pretty dated reference now. Here's Google, go get them. But let's start with, are they given leads or do they have to generate their own leads? Or do we have an account base? Do we have to go see them in person or are we going to do stuff over the phone? Am I selling a premium product where I have to be really good at justifying value, or am I a commodity thing and, people are selling on price? And I can go all the way through and there's probably, 50 different criteria that I want to define, but people don't go that far. They're like, oh, he's a good person for my industry. Boy, look at that resume. Boy, they really interviewed well.
Yeah. Yeah. Who you're selling to makes a huge difference as well. Right. There's a huge difference. At least in my business, selling to a CEO is very different than selling to a head of HR or a hiring manager, right? Like it's a very different sale, very different conversation. I don't think that we think that much about that.
For sure we don't. And if you're selling to a mid-level manager, you're selling to a CEO, or I'll even take it one step further, Rick, and I'll say, are you selling to a person or are you selling to like a whole group of people? Because if I'm selling something that's worth, $100,000, $200,000, you probably have 4 or 5 people who have an opinion and influence on that deal. And to figure out who they all are, map out how they report to each other, who's got power, who doesn't, how do I influence them, is way different than selling to a person, mid-level manager who's making a decision. That's a different skill set that a lot of people don't learn, no matter how long you've been in sales. But if that's the kind of stuff I sell, I want somebody who knows how to handle that complex sale.
That is so very true. Now let's talk a little bit about the interview, because look, I think you and I can both agree, most companies don't have a formal, consistent interview process. What I've experienced is we're going to go hey, talk to Jim coming in for an interview, see if you like him. That's usually the directive. And don't ask any questions that are going to get us any legal trouble.
Yeah. And I think it's compounded when you get to sales because salespeople are used to those types of conversations. They're really, really good interviewers. Salespeople and sales leaders, this is what they do every day, is they talk to people. And then you put them in front of somebody who may not have come from sales. Maybe they came from finance or admin or ops or something, and they're interviewing this person. And I always like to say, it's not a fair fight. And usually the salesperson has the upper edge. And if I haven't even really defined what my process is, it turns out the salesperson has the upper edge. And then if I really like you, I'm like, hey, Rick, I just interviewed Billy over here. He's really cool. I know I didn't have you on the schedule, but I really want somebody else to talk to him. And then I say, will you talk to him? And you're over there going, cool. What are you hiring for? What's the criteria? I don't even know what you asked or what I should be asking. But we use that process, and then we make the bad hire. And like you introduced the whole show is, 6 months later, we're like, sales are kind of flat. What's going on?
Yeah. So very true. I think this comes down to taking the time to really understand how to position the role for the right person. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect.
100%. Define the skill set, define the kind of who you're selling to, define the kind of product you have. Are you the custom? Are you the high end product? Are you the cheap? Because they're all different. I hired learning from a lot of my mistakes today, but I hired a competitor. I had a competitor that was nipping at our heels all the time. And he was, I found out who their top guy was. And I said, I'm going to be really smart. I'm going to hire away their top guy. I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to help me. I'm so smart. And I got this guy over and I brought him in and I said, okay, you work for me now. So tell me, how have you been selling against me? And he goes, well, basically I tell him we do everything you do, but we're cheaper. And I'm just, oh my God, why did I not answer that or ask that question during the interview process?
For sure.
And then every deal the guy brought me for the next 6 months was, boss, if we could just discount this. I'm like, no, that's not how we sell here. And it was a skill set about how do you differentiate and how do you build value and everything that he just did not have.
So crazy. Are you listening to the Higher Power Radio Show? For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, so I'm digging in deeper with our guest, Gary Braun. Gary is the founder and partner of Pivotal Advisors, and we're talking about hiring salespeople and the mistakes that we all have made. And hopefully after you listen to this episode, you won't repeat them anymore, right? So let's talk about how we solve this problem. So how do we first understand that what the business needs? If we can kind of outline a little bit of a process, and then let's talk about how to interview, because again, those are the two single points of failure that I see as I've seen throughout my career as a headhunter, and I've built a lot of sales teams as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll let you bust into that. Let's go.
All right. And I'll even add a third one on to you too, is even if we do make a good hire, if we do a poor job of onboarding that person and give them what they need, you can make a great hire and you give them bad direction and bad management and bad onboarding, and they'll fail as well. Yeah. But let's start with the actual role. So how do you improve your odds? I like mapping out the whole sales process that this person's going to do. And throughout that process, what do they need to be good at? And we've mentioned a few of them. Am I selling the premium? Am I selling the low end? Do I have to be really good and go deep in discovery with one person, or am I going to 5 people? Do I sell to boardrooms? Am I selling to a purchasing manager? Am I managing a territory? Am I managing a few accounts? All of those things are different things. Am I selling direct, or am I selling through a channel partner like a reseller? Because that's a completely different set of skills.
Yeah.
And you go through and you map out what is all the responsibilities this person has to do. And then if I look at that, I go, what are the top 3 or 4 things that are absolute must-haves? And we got to make sure, that they have to be good at, I'll say, generating their own leads, because maybe we don't have a big marketing. They have to be really good at selling value because we're the higher priced company on the block. They have to be really good at a complex sale where there's 5 decision makers. So say it's just those 3, but I narrow it down to those, and we all get agreement. Whoever's part of the hiring process, we all agree on what that criteria is, and then we write our job profile based on that. I look at so many job profiles, and I did this once in a CEO peer group I was presenting. I said, everybody bring your job profile for your salesperson. And I go, cool. Everybody pass your job profile to the right. Does it look just like the last person? And they're all going, yep. And I go, are you even in the same industry or the same business or anything else? They're like, nope. So, I mean, those job profiles are so generic. Let's get super specific on the skill set we need.
My man, the thing that I've experienced that has been the big, like, every time I see a job description, it's not a job description. It's a wish list of skills that is very general. And quite frankly, all you'd have to do is just actually think about what it is that I need this person. Like you said, you've defined out what's most critical and what you need them to do. Now, just think about it in terms of, hey, can I build performance metrics out of this for the first 30, 60, 90 days? Because if I can do that, then it puts me in a position where, like, at least I can not be 6 months down the road scratching my head going, well, why are you not making any sales?
Right. Yeah, it's just like lead generation. This one comes up. Well, first of all, I get people who go, I go, do you want a hunter? Or do you want a farmer? Well, both.
No such thing.
Kind of different skill sets, but which
Yeah.
one's going to be more important to you? But even like within the hunter, the lead generation is a unique skill set. How do I get in the door? How do I get people's attention? Especially in today's world when nobody returns a phone call or an email anymore, and you got to figure out how to get yourself in there and get noticed.
Yeah.
That's a unique skill set if there's not a big marketing engine behind you. And I was
That is so true.
I was interviewing on behalf of one company, and they wanted a hunter. And I'm talking to this guy, and I'm looking at it on my paper, and it's like, led his company in new revenue every year, went to President's Club, new accounts every year. It was great. And I sat him down and I said, wow, a pretty impressive resume. Tell me, and I was focusing around lead generation. I said, tell me, how do you decide who you're even going to target? The guy stops for a minute and he looks at me. He goes, well, I assume there's leads. And I went, nope, no leads here. So how are you going to do that? And he goes, no problem. I'm super connected. I'll use LinkedIn. I'm like, great tool. How do you use LinkedIn? He's like, well, I'll go to everybody I'm connected to and everybody they're connected to. I said, yeah, that's the friends and family network. That runs out after 90 days. Then what? Guy had nothing. And the guy we ended up hiring, he's like, well, first I do this, and here's how I do research. Here's how I use something really relevant. I use networking. I do this. I get into these. He had it nailed. But if I didn't ask those questions specifically around the one skill, they would have hired that guy.
I like how you're bleeding into the interview. And it's kind of interesting because that's really the key, is that asking those deeper level questions. How do you do it? How do you do it is probably the best, most revealing question that you can ask anybody that you interview, even if you don't use any sort of interview process. Walk me through the steps you took to do that, right? Yep. Here's the thing that you catch people, salespeople all the time at a high level. They're very good at saying, oh yeah, I was the number one salesperson. I'm amazing. Da, 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 da. Okay, great. Walk me through that last sale you made. You can see the wheels come off the bus really quickly when somebody's representing more than what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just like I started going on that lead gen, I mean, he fell apart pretty fast.
Yeah.
And to make sure we don't make those mistakes, I like making an interview guide. And here's the 3 or 4 skills we really want to dig into. These are the criticals. And you have your lead in, big open-ended question, but you also got some drill downs. And we might have 3 different people interview this person, but we all have a couple different phrase questions that are all getting at the same kind of thing with drill downs. And then afterwards I can go, hey, Rick, what'd you think of Billy? I scored him a 4 out of 4 in this area. You scored him a 2? Let's talk about what we heard, but we're all talking about the same skills, whatever we were drilling in on.
Yeah. You know what? That's why I actually build intertruths that, you take what you talk about in an interview guide, right? The challenge is that you can give them an interview guide, but always varies because of the fact that like how the conversation flow goes.
Mhm.
But so we built it to have AI kind of coach the people in real time to understand like, hey, do you have enough data here to make a decision? So like when you say, hey, when you get together afterwards, why did you why did you score this person that way, or what was your reasoning for saying no to this person? You've
Right.
got a concrete answer.
Yeah.
Because the often I've heard the yeah, you know what, I just my gut was just telling me this person isn't the right one for me. I'm like, what does your gut know? Like,
Right.
really? You know, your
I,
your gut tells you steers you wrong a lot. Like, I know a lot of people say trust your gut, but it's not right all the time.
you make me think of we were hiring a sales leader for what this company was, VP of sales, and we defined our criteria just like we've been talking about. We went through all these things. We got to the end, and the owner's son said, "I don't like him. He was going to blackball him. I don't like this person." We're like, "Why? What?" And it was a gut thing. And he
Yeah.
goes, "Well, I just don't see this as the kind of person who can stand in front of a crowd of like 200 people and give a presentation." Said, okay, that was
Based
never
on what?
part of our criteria. So where did that come from? And we
Yeah.
said, let's dig in. And he came back and when it was all said and done, it's like, yeah, Jim in marketing is really good at that. He'll do that. They hired this guy. He rocked that company. They promoted him to COO within 6 months.
So that's the thing. Based on what? Where do you get this? Where like this is the thing that's always bugged me. Like when I get interview feedback. Okay, I don't think this person's going to be able to grow into a leader. Okay, well, how? Like where'd this magical information come from, right? And it's never substantiated, which again, that's
Right.
my peeve, but it's always driven me nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about process as far as interviews. So you've got kind of a process that you guys work within. So share with me your framework.
Yeah. So I like somebody starts with the screening, sees if it fits the general uh, requirements of the job. They got the right background. They've got whatever else. They get through the main stuff. Are they going to be culturally a fit on the surface? Then I like getting at least 2 points of view, if not more, depending on the size of the company. But I want a couple different people to ask questions, all getting at the same skill set that we've aligned on. So we can compare thoughts. Anybody can hear different things on different days. So I want at least a couple different points of view. Whether you do that together or you do that in a group, I don't care. But at least get a couple perspectives. I'm really big on having the person do something, some type of an activity. We just had the NFL draft not long ago, and they didn't ask those people how fast they ran. They actually made them run, and they timed them and everything. I want to see the salesperson do something. I want to see them write an email or give a presentation or do some research or create a plan, because you learn so much about them by the level of effort they do. And then I like using assessments on top of that.
All right. So the second step, which you talked about, which is like have people interview and then compare and like, you talked about your interview guide earlier,
Yep.
right? So how are you, so again, like how are you getting people to ask the questions, but then how are you teaching them to drill down deeper to get to a deeper level of understanding about that person?
Some of it is
Right, that's
training.
usually that's usually where we drop the ball.
Yeah, some of it is training. Some of them we have to show them examples. I've recorded interviews before and showed them and see how I kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
Some of it is training. Some of it is the interview guide itself. Say, here's a leading question, but here's how I want you to dig down and give them some other ones. If the conversation can flow that way, that's good too. But then when we get to the end of the interview, it's just not, hey, Rick, what'd you think? Up, down? What do you think? I felt pretty good about that guy. I look pretty. No, I want to go back to that criteria that we said. And how did they do in their ability to generate leads? How did they do in their ability to navigate a complex sale? How about their ability to sell premium? And for each one of those, we're going to have a discussion. This is what I heard. This is what you heard. Let's score them on that. And we're taking this highly subjective decision about whether this is the right person or not. And we're making it as objective as we can by drilling back down to those criteria that we established.
You nailed it. I mean, having an objective. I mean, I look at if you think about it, most hiring decisions are made based on assumptions, bias, and personal motives.
For sure.
Eliminate that, and now we can start making smart decisions.
Yeah.
right? I love the fact that you just said that I like to, if I'm hiring a salesperson, I want to hear them sell. I want to hear them do something that'll give me a really clear indicator of how they operate. We actually created this thing called a working session, which is exactly what you're talking about,
Mhm.
right? Where we give somebody a data set and we say, hey, come in, we're going to work together for 90 minutes and we're going to work through a problem together. I'm going to have you hop on and like, we're going to build a script and I'm going to have you hop on and make a couple of phone calls, or we'll role play, right?
Yeah. I,
Well,
we gave one of our clients, they had 3 finalists. We gave them an assignment, said, you've learned enough about us now where you understand what we do, how we're positioned and whatnot. Go find someone you think would be a good prospect for us. And I want you to come back and present to us as if we're that prospect. That was the total instruction. One person called back and said, hey, I got more questions for you. Just one of the 3. Interesting. I like
yeah,
that. The
yeah,
other 2 came back. One did a pretty good job. It was all just notebook paper. The next guy did notebook paper. He had a decent presentation. The last guy gave a presentation, how we fit into their strategy, who the people were, how they're connected together. And he finishes up and he goes, and I hope you don't mind, but I made some calls and I think I can get us in there next week. I'm like, dude, you're our guy.
see, that is such a clear snapshot of how somebody's going to operate once they get
Right.
to the organization, right? I mean, there's nothing better than that from the perspective, like, you know, y- let's just face it, most salespeople tend to be lone wolves. They just want to be like, tell me what to do and I'll just go do it,
Right.
right? Um, there's, if that's what your environment is, that's great.
Yeah.
But if you have a collaborative work environment or like you need somebody to be asking questions to learn about things and they don't do it, again, we're going back to assumptions and it's almost more of a transactional mindset, which is going to bite you in the butt later on down the road, especially if you've got a more complex sale.
Yeah. I see companies all the time who, a little bit larger companies, have a really well-established sales process. Here's the play, run the play works.
Yeah.
You can plug a lot of people into that. But if you're a smaller company, you really haven't defined it that way, and you're maybe even more startup mode where there's a lot of that's a different skill set for somebody who knows how to go figure it out and put together the process because it's not well defined. From that candidate pool is really small. And
Yeah.
if you hire the guy that says, give me the play, he ain't gonna work.
Yeah, that's what I like to call a builder. Like,
Yeah.
and it's a small percentage of people out there that like, they're the people that like when they were kids, they like to build Legos, right? Like they get charged up by like, give me nothing and I'll come create something for you. Like there's not a lot of people out there like that.
Yeah.
I happen to be what they're called entrepreneurs and they probably aren't working for you. They're starting up their own businesses,
Right. Right.
right? All right. Dude, this is awesome, Gary. So we're getting pretty close on time. Give me 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience they can plug into their business today.
Start by defining the absolutely critical skills you need for the role. And you throw out your old job profile, that just boil it down to those skills. That's number one. Figure out what the need to haves are and the nice to haves. Then create your whole interview process around that. If you just sat around and said, okay, one of them is you need to be able to sell premium, I bet on your own you could come up with a whole list of questions to know if somebody knows how to do that. And then the third one, we talked about a little bit already. Somewhere in the process, make them do something, make them prove it. I like to see written skills. Send me an email, prospecting email. I like to see their presentation skills or how they would act in front of a customer. Those are great as well. And then I'm a big fan of using assessments and stuff that digs underneath that surface layer later.
Yeah, because quite frankly, if you're just trusting a salesperson that says, "Hey, I'm really good at what I do," and you're believing them, that's on you.
Yeah. Then your batting average is pretty low on hiring salespeople.
Yeah, yeah. Then call me when I got a car to sell. Gary, thanks so much for your time investment today. I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience can find you, find your company?
Yeah, a couple different ways. Our website, pivataladvisors.com. That's Pivotal, and advisors with an ORS on the end. People really struggle with that. So pivotadvisors.com. Go to YouTube and just type in Pivotal Advisors, and there's all kinds of videos out there that our company's done on everything from process to strategy to hiring to onboarding to coaching to everything else out there. So there's a couple different ways, but if you've got some sales challenges, we'd love to talk to you.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all, this show's for you, and we want to continue to provide valuable content for you week after week. You can check us out further at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@intertru.ai. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Gerard.